Since Harry Potter is in the final, it's only fitting Ronald Weasley is in the final too. Ronald Weasley. Who is Ronald Weasley? Okay. Sasu and Andrew. Okay.
Missile.
The other team was... Oh, it'll be announced later. Can we have reps from every team here? In fact, all the teams. Severus Snape, Dobby, Harry Potter, Ronald Weasley. Severus Snape. Severus Snape.
They are OG.
Dobby.
Sasu, start prepping for OG.
Harry Potter.
You know what they will do to you.
Ronald Weasley.
Eh? Another missile.
Ronald Weasley. Sasu.
He's finding Andrews. I'll come to fool. Yo, Isaac, one rep.
That's the point.
Eh? Who?
That's what I'm saying. Okay, so I'm asking who.
Guys,
Or whether they should do it.
guys,
Can we have a bet?
we are changing the system a bit. We
Eh?
are going to do balloting this time around.
No. They want to do balloting.
It was a prank, please.
Sorry, Sasu.
So for the record, the first breaking team will choose what role they want to be in the final. Then second breaking team will choose what role they want. Third breaking team will choose what role they want.
Well.
And unfortunately, Ronald Weasley is left to pick the last role. So, Severus Snape, can you announce the role that you picked? Severus Snape. Severus Snape in closing opposition. Dobby.
That's what.
Dobby.
OG.
Dobby picks closing government. The closing spots are taken. Hey, are you guys sure you want the roles you're taking? The roles you're taking. Harry Potter. Harry Potter takes opening opposition. And so Ronald Weasley is in opening government. So what next? Motion? Yeah. Okay. Are you ready for the streaming? Guys, motion for the grand final. Grand final motion. Information slide.
Yeah, quite long, so get a...
Quite long, so please listen. Quite long. Guys, I will need absolute silence, please. Information slide. Guys, thank you. I'm reading the info slide. In Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows 2. In Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows 2. Guys, Lord Voldemort Guys, hey. In Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows 2, Lord Voldemort besieges Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry in a final attempt to kill his age-long nemesis, Harry Potter. Realizing that the entire school is gearing up for battle against him, he announces a 1-hour ultimatum for the release of Harry Potter, who is one of Hogwarts students, who was secured within the school's perimeter, promising that he would not attack anyone in Hogwarts should Potter be handed over to him. While majority of people within the walls of Hogwarts were bent on protecting Potter, there still remained some within the school who found Voldemort's conditional request preferable rather than to participate in what was to be the bloody Battle of Hogwarts. It is worth noting that there had been a prophecy at Potter's birth that his existence was tied to Voldemort's, and that neither would live while the other survived. Motion for the grand final. The time is 7:47. Grand final begins at 8:02. Motion for the grand final reads, this house as Hogwarts will release Harry Potter.
Sasue. Mike. Do you? Oh no, 50 minutes prep, please. Do you really think Andrews?
Hey, Ralph, don't choose violence. Andrews can't talk.
Yeah, but last
not
Hogwarts we had. Well,
Andrews, hello.
Prosper. I don't. Erasmus. Do we have a conversation during prep as usual Hogwarts tradition? Okay, thank you. Desmond, how you doing? Use the mic. No. Please, it's normal. It happens every year at Hogwarts. You can go and prep outside. It doesn't make sense. We don't care. Like, honestly, we don't care. Desmond, how are you doing? No, use the mic. Because it happens every year at Hogwarts. We try to have interactions with people to know how they feel about the tournament. Can you hear me?
Ralph, your friends are in the finals.
I'm not bothered. On the road, like I'm not bothered. It's Hogwarts. What did you expect? He's not in the finals. I'm sorry, let me ask you. As a first year student in Hogwarts, your first Hogwarts, can you tell us about your Hogwarts experience?
The final judges. So we have a 7-member panel. Chairing the final is Jacob Johnson Aktakpa, aka JJ. Now the panelists. The first panelist is Solomon Omani Mensah. Then, yes, Erica Samoa, myself. The next panelist is Pascal. We have Kezia.
Pascal, you gave me 4 now. Which you couldn't just.
Then Raphael. Then last but not the least, we have Dennis Dagadu.
Yeah, they do.
Okay, so continue guessing.
Fine, boys, I got to one free.
Best judge. Best judge on the show. Come on, today. Wasn't it a dream that I'll break through? Exactly. It means anything I want to do, you have to. I beg. No science. I don't like math. I don't like science. But I'm majoring I mean, there are different
I don't acknowledge all these things.
HR, but unfortunately, I don't know how your system is. But
You didn't bring anything out. So there's nothing like. So
writing,
there's nothing else you could do. What you watched? Wasn't it?
I think it was 07.
No, I didn't watch.
I didn't remove because of
I couldn't
That one.
some of the show. Yeah, no, I removed it. I was using it
How do I
like
remove it? So they calculate
Oh, okay.
add up and strike and add.
my thing.
So if you don't get 07, 06, that's the highest. The highest is 06. And so it goes up. So the higher the number, the bad and great. Yeah. So if you have 06, 07, you want to bad 06. And you choose for different main accounts. So I chose for business and some other ones. So one of them I chose second choice. So that's how I yeah.
You have to have ours.
Harry Potter Day final.
No, you have to have your other.
No, she's literally stealing my notebook.
So the languages are
Now, Voldemort.
one I missed out to. So is it the same thing?
Ours is CSL. Then it's
Same thing mine. Because at least last year or last 2 years, they filled more than half. Because yeah, yeah, the, so everyone was complaining. So
Let's
yeah, yeah, they made it so everybody else pronounce better. Before paper.
hello. Hello, bitches. I want to inform all of you that on behalf of Prosper, fuck all of you. And special mentions to Cap. On behalf of Prosper Metal, we would like to say fuck all of you. Special mention to Cap. Eh, special acknowledgement. On behalf of Prosper Metal, we would like to say fuck all of you.
All right, good evening. Okay, good evening. Welcome to the grand finale of the Hogwarts Invitational Round Robin 2021. Info slide. In Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows 2, Lord Voldemort besieges Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry in a final attempt to kill his age-long nemesis, Harry Potter. Realizing that the entire school is gearing up for battle against him, he announces a 1-hour ultimatum for the release of Harry Potter, one of the school students, who was secured within the school's perimeter, promising that he would not attack anyone in Hogwarts should Potter be handed over to him. While majority of people within the walls of Hogwarts were bent on protecting Potter, there still remained some within the school who found Voldemort's conditional request preferable, rather than to participate in what was to be the bloody battle of Hogwarts. It is worth noting that there had been a prophecy at Potter's birth that his existence was tied to Voldemort's and that neither would live while the other survived. The motion, this house as Hogwarts will release Harry Potter. In the final, we have in team opening government Ron Weasley, Duke Sasu, and Andrew Tekpete. In opening opposition, we have Harry Potter, Frank Bannerman, and Isaac Dua. In closing government, we have Dobby, Masheria Njuguna, and Erasmus Segbefia. And in closing opposition, we have Severus Snape, Nzube Nwakuru, and Elisha Owusu Ichao. Chairing this final shall be myself, JJ Atakpa, and I'm flanked by Solomon Omani Mensah, Eric Asamoah, Raphael Amankwa, Pascal Obeng Blaise, Kezia Ochre, and Dennis Dagadu. The House will now recognize the Prime Minister.
At the core of self-defense is a concept of how utilitarian objectives have secured the sovereignty of nations. Whenever you have an encounter, pride and comfort should not put you into a point of illusion that makes you think that at all costs you must fight. Sometimes rationality in the circumstances continue to preserve nations and ensures the sanctity of territory. In this debate, at the core of the info side is what we call a prophecy. A prophecy within a context of a wizardry world is a grand norm that's more like their guiding principle that ensures that they are assured of what comes tomorrow. A prophecy to wizards, in principle, is their guiding light and torch that tells them the exactitude of what will happen tomorrow. Within the premise and knowledge base of that exactitude, what is the most rational thing to do in an act of self-defense? That you cut down on casualties, where ultimately the object is that you end up getting a result that you cannot despair from. At the heart of prophecy are two narratives I want to talk about. Firstly, that prophecy is the grand norm that dictates the lives of wizards. Number two, prophecy provides a certainty of results and direction in a world of wizardry. So in this debate, right, within the context of the info slide, it's a prophecy that says that the life of Harry Potter is intertwined with the life of Lord Voldemort. Should Harry Potter die, Voldemort also dies. So ultimately, one cannot live while the other survives. Death happens in the regard. And that is what the prophecy, this is what the info slide says in this debate. In the context of this debate, let us not allow for exterior narratives that tends to dictate to us the story direction of Harry Potter. The story is limited within the context of an info slide that tells us a prophecy and its importance in this debate. We are sticking by that by the info slide as our prophetic mandate from OG. So in this debate primarily, I'm going to give you scenarios of what can happen, all right, in a world of this debate. Let's look at all the outcomes, and let's show you why we say that Harry Potter should be released to Lord Voldemort.
Points.
So the first scenario one, a world where Hogwarts does not release Harry Potter. This is what happens. A ferocious fight of wizards ensue. There are casualties on both sides when hundreds of people in Hogwarts die. That's what happens. What happens then is that Lord Voldemort is killed. But per the prophecy, Harry Potter also dies. That's one world. So ultimately, Harry Potter dies. He's not protected. That is one word limit for the clarification. Second scenario, please, don't stop bothering me. A world where Lord Voldemort breaches the Hogwarts territory. A ferocious fight ensues among the wizards. Hundreds of casualties end up happening. People dying. Voldemort captures Harry Potter. Voldemort kills Harry Potter. Voldemort dies as well. So in that narrative, death ensues on both metrics. Third scenario, Hogwarts end up killing Harry Potter. Per the prophecy, Harry Potter dies. At the end of the day, they achieve the same narrative. The fourth element in this debate is that a fight ensues and no one wins in principle. Then what happens is that Voldemort returns again and casualties end up being expounded. So there is a continuous attack on the Hogwarts territory, and what happens at the end of the day, you continue to lose wizards within that narrative. What we say, primarily within all these scenarios, is that at the end of the day, you are assured that the killing of your enemy only kills Harry Potter, in principle. If you fail to kill him, he comes back again and again and again, where a fight ensues and you lose more and more people. What is the most rational thing to do within this context? We say, release Harry Potter. I'll take closing.
So, Harry Potter is Voldemort's nemesis. In case you don't understand the word nemesis. What that means is, if Voldemort dies, he lives. If he lives, Voldemort dies. There's a mutual exclusivity of each other's survival. Engage that premise and don't fuck up this final.
So, Panel, it is worth noting that there had been a prophecy at Potter's birth that his existence was tied to Voldemort's, and that neither would live while the other survived. The info slide is much clearer than you can ever imagine. Please, stop creating your own narrative in this debate. So principally, we are limiting ourselves within the context of this info slide in this motion. Our point ultimately is this. In a world where you are assured that Harry Potter's death or life is tied to Voldemort, in a world where you fail to kill him, your enemy, he ends up coming in again and again, and there are more casualties on your side. You lose more and more people. We agree that no, there must be a moral justification of protecting your person through it all out. But it becomes irrational when at the end of the day, the utility you get is more and more deaths on your side, and there is no world where you kill your enemy but ends up preserving your own. The point is that whatever utilitarian measure you are taking should be one that helps you to achieve an objective that is quite definite. The prophecy tells you, principally, what that objective is and what that end goal will be. We argue, principally, that in that world, the most rational element is to release Harry Potter within this very debate. Now, then again, let's move on to why the prophecy once again becomes the fundamental point within the context of this debate. The prophecy fundamentally becomes more like an astute narrative by which you are guided by the leadership. What it means is that when you fail to take an action that rationally preserves your sovereignty in general, what you do is that you lose an internal trust of what outcome should be. Because clearly, those prophecies are narratives that guide you. What you get, because ultimately, for them who slides, there are different disagreeing disparities here. Where one party says, release them, other says, you should continue fighting Lord Voldemort. What happens in these worlds, primarily, is this. You have a world where you fail intrinsically, and the internal struggle says that no, there was a definity of outcome. Why not preserve that definite outcome? But you decided to become the proud narrative who felt that you could go your own way. The other world that happens is that a breach of your territory that distorts your very survival and collapses your very territory. Why? Because you fail to act rationally in principle. Proudly proposition.
The House will now recognize the Leader of Opposition.
Am I audible? Can I start? Can I start? Can I start? Panel. So my love of Harry Potter has finally paid off. So what you remember opening opposition for is not a matter dump on the Harry Potter story. We'll engage the context of this debate with the information on Harry Potter and also engage the principles which the debate's about, such as morality, deontology, and utilitarianism, right? So let's begin and show you why there's no way opening government wins this debate, and we need to recover from the mess they made, right? So Sasu is so dependent on like the prophecy. It's not that deep. Like the prophecy is not that deep. It's simple, right? It's that if Harry Potter dies, Voldemort lives. If Voldemort dies, Harry Potter lives. Simple. That means the entire principle they run in this debate is flawed and they're out. The second thing they say is that like, what is the most rational thing to do? That's the burden they place on us. My entire case will be to show you how the most rational thing to do is self-preservation. In a world in which you give up Harry Potter, you give up your ability to self-preserve. Self-preservation should always be evaluated on the basis of sustainable preservation. If you preserve yourself based on current little marginal gains, what happens is that you take away your ability to be able to sustainably protect yourself. And that's something I'll analyze to you in my speech, opening governments out of this debate. So let's start. Most importantly, this motion is an ACTA motion. The motion says this house has Hogwarts. So, and they don't even analyze to you the interest of the actor. What are the interests of Hogwarts? Two things. Number one, self-preservation, which is to be able to educate and impact knowledge to the next generation of the wizarding world. Number two, protect its students from harm and threat. These interests are predicated on two things. So, for them to be able to have those interests to exist, it's predicated on two things. Number one, the surety of no threat to the magical world. The problem is that with the existence of Voldemort, Hogwarts is constantly under threat of Voldemort harming them, of Voldemort being able to kill people, being able to take away the ability for them to do this job, right? We think the existence of Voldemort is an active threat to the magical world. Why? What does Voldemort want? Number one, he wants to dominate the magical world and control it. This means that in a world in which he continues to exist, Hogwarts' freedom to educate is hampered because there is a huge evil force that controls the entire magical world and prevents your ability to be able to do your job as a school or as an institution. Your freedom of thought to be able to educate your students in the future is now taken away because you are being dominated by an evil force such as Voldemort, right? And we saw Voldemort do this. When he assumed power to an extent and took over Hogwarts, he chose the kind of headmasters that were supposed to be in Hogwarts. What he did was that he chose the curricula such as torture and all those things. He allowed them to use torture as a means of teaching in Hogwarts and all those things. It means that the freedom of the institution to be able to impact knowledge, which is the interest of the actor in this debate, is harmed in a world in which Voldemort continues to exist. That is going to happen. In the world in which you give up Harry Potter and he dies, it means that you don't get the interest of Hogwarts being represented. The second thing that Voldemort wants to do is to wage war against half-bloods, right? Because he believes that half-bloods or people who come from non-magical families are muddy, like their blood is muddy, and he wants to purify them, right? That is why he constantly waged war against such people, even when he was a student in Hogwarts, by attacking people who were of non-magical blood, right? What happens in a world in which he wins is that half-bloods in Hogwarts. Notice that Hogwarts has a position on this. Hogwarts' position on this is that people from non-magical families can be allowed to study magic, right? In a world in which, Voldemort wins, the school is stopped from doing these things. It means that people who are from non-magical families are threatened of either being killed or being taken away from these schools. It means that Hogwarts is actively a threat in a world in which Voldemort does this. But the third thing Voldemort wants to do or to achieve is immortality. He wants to live forever, right? Him living forever means that he presents an oppositional force that will always be diametrically opposing to the principles of Hogwarts. It means that in a world in which you give up Harry Potter, all you do is that you create a body that is totally antagonizing to you, totally dominates the magical world, and controls every single thing within that space. It means that there's no self-defense, there's no self-preservation on your side. You totally doom yourself, and that's why we think you don't achieve anything in the world in which this happens. The second thing, the goal of Hogwarts, again, is to protect its students. So let's evaluate. In a world in which you give up Harry Potter, do you protect your students or not? This is why you don't do it. You don't do so. The premise upon which Voldemort says, give up Harry Potter is that, give up Harry Potter and I'll stop killing those people. It means that if you are engaging with a terrorist cell or a terrorist organization, are you going to be able to trust them when they say they give you an ultimatum and all those things? We think there is no reason why Hogwarts should trust Voldemort, right? Why? Because there's no good faith with that particular person. Why is this so? Because he has a track record of deceit. So we could actually give up Harry Potter and this guy can just come back and kill us anyways, right? We think to an extent where that's a possibility that exists, especially when the actor has a track record of deceit. So for instance, this track record of him lying to the ghost of Ravenclaw to be able to steal her diadem and make it a Horcrux, right? It looks like him killing his own uncle so that he can just take a ring. This guy is untrustworthy. See, you can't trust Voldemort. That guy is bad. We can't trust him. It means that in a world in which this happens, right, there's a very high possibility we go up Harry Potter, he kills Harry Potter, comes back and kills us anyways, right? We think for the mere fact that fate does not exist, there's no point in us giving Harry Potter. It means it is we don't even get any benefit at the end of the day. The reason why that's important is that giving him up is supposed to give us a benefit. If there's a possibility of not getting that benefit, then we think it's nonsensical to give up Harry Potter. The next thing, we think Hogwarts was complicit in Voldemort becoming a monster. Why is this so? Because Hogwarts was the socializing tool in being able to educate Voldemort, right? It means that because of the inability of Hogwarts to be able to steer Voldemort in such a way that he was a good wizard who cared for the magical world, but it turned out to be a terrible person who wants to kill people. We think Hogwarts was complicit in doing these things. So for instance, what happened was that for instance, Dumbledore realized that Voldemort was doing some really fishy things, but he didn't probe further. These are some of the things that were happening, right? So to an extent where you are complicit in the creation of a monster, and Harry Potter had nothing to do with it, we think it's morally unjustified then for Hogwarts to be able to give up a human being and kill that human being for a problem they caused in the first place. So we think that doesn't exist, right? We think they have a moral obligation to do all in their power to fight against Voldemort. But the next thing is that we think in our world there's a likelihood of winning the war with Harry Potter on our side. Why is this so? Because notice that Harry Potter is the only weapon that can actually kill Voldemort, right? It means that in a world in which you give up Harry Potter, you are fucked. There's really nothing you can do anymore and you are going to die anyways. But in our world, even if we have Harry Potter and a lot of people die, for the mere fact that we have hope, for the mere fact that we have numbers and inspiration that are able to garner huge numbers of people to be able to support Harry Potter to be able to win the war, we think the likelihood of winning the war on our side is a better thing for us to buy into. Final thing, we think they create a system in which you can no longer trust Hogwarts because Hogwarts just gives up its students like any day, like day in, day out, right? It means we want to create a slippery slope where we can no longer trust institutions like Hogwarts. This debate is about the actor, Hogwarts. The entire opposition case has been able to show you why, in our world, we protect that actor's interest, and this is why open opposition wins this debate.
Thank you very much, Leader of Opposition. The House will now recognize the Deputy Prime Minister, sorry.
All right, great. So I'm starting my speech now. The problem with opening opposition is that they spend so much time trying to show you that, oh, there exist problems on Gov side without defending the alternative. And that's death in comparative motions, because what they fail to show is that, oh, there are harms when you give up Harry Potter. Obviously, there are equally harms when you say that let's hold Harry Potter, right? And that's what they don't show you. Because the only thing he said about that is that they have a higher chance of winning the war because you have Harry Potter. And I'll show you why that in itself is not assured. What you have is the consistent battle that Sasu tells you. The second thing they do is to say, well, the mistake in Sasu's identification of the prophecy negates every single impact. That's not true, right? It's the impact still hold, and that's what I'll be explaining. Because what it means is that if Harry Potter's survival is what ensures Voldemort's ultimate goal to be achieved, it gives an unending incentive for him to ensure that he keeps on coming back until he gets whatever he wants. What it means is that Hogwarts is literally keeping the very tool that consistently attracts Voldemort's attention and his rage. It's like keeping hostile the very element that would make terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda great and their entitlement to themselves, right? That in no way pulls them away or tells them to go back. You really fuel their interest to consistently attack you, and that's what they need to defend on their side. A world where Voldemort never goes away, right? But let me deal with a few things that they say. They say, well, they need to self-preserve, and self-preservation comes only when you don't give, you don't give Harry Potter away. Why? Because you need to protect yourself, etc. The reason why there are people within Hogwarts who are buying into the narrative of giving away Harry Potter means that the very solidarity that you need in Hogwarts to be able to wage the strongest war to defeat Voldemort, given the unending power that you say he's seeking, and the kind of power he has amassed so far, means Hogwarts doesn't have the unified ability to be able to withstand Voldemort. It means that you are most likely going to have people even fighting against, or even concocting narratives against the very strategy. Why? Because certain people don't want to put themselves on the line for Harry Potter, right? We don't think Hogwarts is a unified system. That's why those nuances exist in there. You need to prove to us the amount of solidarity you need to be able to defeat Voldemort exists. And the info slide clearly tells you that doesn't. Which means two things. Most likely, you are going to have a half-waged war support from Hogwarts. Which means, secondly, you are going to be more exposed and more vulnerable. Thirdly, you are going to lose more people on your side. And fourthly, regardless, you don't get the self-preservation that you want, because when you don't give up Harry Potter, the faction that wants you to give him out will still leave, because they feel that you are making them make sacrifices that they are not willing to make by putting themselves on the line in exchange for Harry Potter. In both worlds, you are going to get distraction either ways, right? The internal one is far more pernicious. Why? Because it means that you can't even trust the very people that Hogwarts has to depend on for self-preservation.
self-preservation, their model of self-preservation is far more suicidal than the one that Sasu talks to you about. So you cannot defend the alternative on their side. The second thing they say is that the interest of Hogwarts is to protect students. True, right? But to what extent should that protection go? To the extent where that protection puts the existence of Hogwarts itself on the line. We say when the collective good, right, is threatened by the good of an individual, it is justified to trade off that individual good, right? Because what these guys would have you believe is that for some magical reason, what the students of Hogwarts would now say is that nobody will trust Hogwarts anymore. What we say is that you cannot trust us when you put us on the line. You cannot trust Hogwarts when you put the entirety of its existence and its solidarity on the line. And that's a justified means, right? Because it means that people are careful about the kind of activities that they engage in. There's a reason why KNUST will not go out of its way to defend you when itself is on the line, because that's really the true measure of self-preservation. If you want self-preservation, that's the defense for giving up Harry Potter, because that's what you get on our side. I'll take your POI.
So you know, so you don't engage what we tell you. Even when you give up Harry Potter, right? Voldemort has an interest to continue to dominate the magical space, and that is diametrically opposing to the interest of Hogwarts. Engage that.
You see, I don't need to engage that, because what you have to engage, you fail to do that. What I'm saying here is that regardless, right? First of all, there is no assurance that Voldemort is ultimately going to come back, because all he says, his entire case is that you can't trust Voldemort, right? That's risky. At best, we can't trust him. But in the same vein, you can't trust the internal solidarity that you have to ride on to fight Voldemort. What we say is that even when we give up Harry Potter and we still can't trust Voldemort, at least we still know that we have an enemy that we have to deal with. On their side, the enemy is internal, and that's far more pernicious, because the very solidarity that the school is built on is now broken. That's what you need to defend on your side, right? But then the third thing is that they say, well, we create a body so powerful that's antagonistic to, Hogwarts. That is not going away in either world, because what I told you is that what we are going to do is to give, Voldemort an incentive to consistently make Harry Potter Hogwarts the target, because Harry Potter is still there, right? You still create an incentive for your biggest enemy to keep on coming back. Everybody creates enemies. What we say is that when individuals' interest threatens the collective interest, it is justified to trade it off. It is justified to let them go, right? Because that's the basis on which solidarity is maintained, right? So you cannot win this debate by saying we create an enemy. You equally create an enemy when you keep the very thing that incites its violence against you within your turf and within your territory, because they have to penetrate it to get it. Everybody creates enemies on their side. We are better off because we stand with a system of self-defense, right? But then the final thing here is to say, if truly, right, which is what the info slide says, truly Harry Potter's existence denies Voldemort's ability to make the very things that he wants to do come true, it is what drives his interest and his incentive in the worlds of wizardry, which means he will consistently keep on coming back. He will mobilize every single power he has in ability to get that. Even with the misidentification of Sasu, all the impacts still happen. You don't brush it off by simply saying that, it was a simple, grammatical misunderstanding, so every impact vanishes. That's what I did. They need to come back to defend their alternative. A world where you can't even depend on Hogwarts to defend itself because of broken unity prior to propose.
Thank you very much, second speaker from First Government. Would now like to recognize the Deputy Leader of Opposition.
So before I begin my speech, it was no coincidence that our team name is Harry Potter, because you are going to defend what Harry and Gryffindor stands for. So before I go on, let me tell you the exact prophecy that Dumbledore overheard in that bar. And just listen very well. He says, the one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord approaches, and the Dark Lord shall mark him as his equal, but he shall have power the Dark Lord knows not, for neither can live while the other survives. So it wasn't just that when Voldemort, or so far as Harry lives, it threatened the survival of Voldemort. But again, Harry was the only hope. So if prophecy is as important to the wizardry world as Sasu says it, this prophecy showed that Harry is the only hope at defeating Voldemort. So Harry is not just the one keeping Voldemort alive by like threatening the survival of Voldemort, but he's also the one that holds the potential or the weapon that would kill Voldemort. Now let's have the debate. We think that Sasu wasted 7 minutes of his speech, and we're expecting Andrews to do better, but he came to still run around what Sasu is saying. Because when you hear him making arguments like, oh, there will be casualties, so we should give Harry Potter up to protect ourselves as Hogwarts, that's still that is negligible of what Bonaman already tells you. Because the fact is that when Harry Potter dies, it doesn't mean Voldemort dies. That's it. If on anything, it means Voldemort now has a free card to immortality, because the only threat to Voldemort's life is Harry Potter's existence, and that is what the prophecy said. So we don't think that just giving him up or giving him up to Voldemort means that we are safe from Voldemort, and there is no certainty, as Bannerman already establishes to you. Then he goes on to arguments like, see, we have people who wanted to give Harry Potter up, and that those people would still be antagonistic and to create internal skirmishes. Clearly, he's not watched the movie. Slytherins and Gryffindors are always fighting. There is that competition and that friction that always exists. It doesn't mean Hogwarts has broken down. We think that this is nothing new and nothing strange to the competition and to the rivalry that exists between the two halls. But most of these people who wanted to give Harry up was mostly the Slytherin who saw Harry as a rival rather than a colleague. But most part of Hogwarts, or most people, the Gryffindors, the Ravenclaws, the Hufflepuffs, and even some of Slytherins supported that we protected Harry, and that was the general consensus. We don't think that the few people having the idea that we should give Harry up is something that we should go with. But even if that is not enough for you, the reason why you can't give them credit for that argument is because equally, when you give Harry Potter up, we think that Gryffindors will be angry, and Harry lovers will also be angry in the school. It will create skirmishes too. So how then can that be a justification for why we should give Harry Potter up? I'll take your response.
Few questions. Why is Voldemort bad? Why is keeping magic pure and exploring the deep parts of it bad? What makes Harry Potter special? From the info slide.
All right, so what I've told you is that the reason why Voldemort is bad, the actor is Hogwarts. The reason why Voldemort is bad is because whatever he stands for diametrically opposes what we stand for. So if Voldemort wants to cleanse the wizarding world of half-bloods, but Hogwarts wants to protect them, then in our texts or in our books, Voldemort is bad. If Voldemort wants to kill a student of ours in order to achieve his goal of immortality, which is Harry Potter, then in our books, Voldemort is bad. We think that all these goals that Voldemort wanted to achieve opposes the interest of Hogwarts, so he becomes bad. But we think that this debate is not necessarily going to engage why we need to keep half-bloods around, why we need a peer wizarding group and stuff like that. We think Hogwarts has a stance on this issue, and the debate should be the one who protects Hogwarts' stance on this issue. We move on from there. But Panam, why OO wins this debate hands down? We tell you about 6 things. Firstly, this is before I go on to what Banaman said. This is extensions. That first, on the sacrosanct of life, tells you that the value of life can never be capped, and that That is a very reasonable to do, and the very standard that we have. That at any point in time, you don't just trade people's life because of an end that you want to achieve. In this case, self-preservation. Why we like it in our world is because in our world there is like that. Two things can happen. The fight can drag on, or like when we fight Voldemort, we would have casualties. In their world, there is a certainty of death. Harry Potter dies. The implication of Harry Potter dying when they give him to Voldemort is that now Voldemort's ticket to immortality is achieved. Now the weapon that we have at defeating Voldemort is also gone. And lastly, we give a free card of kowtowing to the terrorist and kowtowing to the rogue actor. In our world, what happened is that we pick our weapons and fight them. Even if we have casualties, the most likely outcome is that we are going to overpower them and defeat them, that like happened in the movie. And we are going to rid ourselves of a perpetual enemy that might come back to hunt us. Like, so we like it in our world. In our world, we put up a fight, and that certainty is something that we enjoy. But even if you say in our world the fight drags on, we still think that like we have a higher chance of winning because we have the numbers and we have the support and we have the solidarity. But secondly, we think that like this means that it is immoral to at any point in time choose or define what limit the value of life should be placed, saying that you are worth one life, so we are going to protect 5 lives ahead of your life. We think that it is immoral to do that because that principle of utilitarianism always have a cap. So at what point do we draw the line? So it is easy when you say we are choosing one person over 100 people, but would you choose 90 people over 95 people, or would you choose 95 people over 90 people, or 91 people over 90 people? Why this is important is because the uncertainty of the outcome and the fact that it's not giving us any sustainable change, even if Harry Potter is given to Voldemort, means that it's a morally bankrupt thing to do, to bet a life on this particular issue, and we shouldn't support it on any day. We think that it then becomes self-defeating for your end. But what is the impact of not upholding the principle? Because mind you, students had individual contracts from Harvard to invite them and enroll them. This means that the contract of students is not tied with the collective contract with Harvard. So Harry's contract with Hogwarts is personal. So Hogwarts owe a personal duty to Harry Potter to protect him as an individual student, the same way he owes to other people. What that means that at any point, Hogwarts has no moral ground to break that niche. If you break it, the impact is that people are even less secure when they know that at any point in time in their lives, they can be sacrificed for a seeming larger populace. The confidence level and security is more ensured if people know that their individual contract with the school for care, shelter, and tutelage will forever be respected. In our world, we put Hogwarts on the line, and we don't make sure the devil Voldemort ever wins. Proud.
Thank you very much, Deputy Leader of Opposition. Would now like to recognize the Member of Government.
Can I do a shout out? I like doing shout outs. So I'd like to do a shout out to Nolutando. So Nolutando would make me do Harry Potter quizzes during our free time. So finally they've come to help me in one way or another. So God bless Nolutando, wherever she is. All right, give me a second. Starting in 3, 2, 1. Solomon, Eric, JJ, you said this motion. I'm sure you knew that there's a silver bullet argument on Gov. So if this debate is to exist outside the info slide, if you're going to judge it on anything that's not on the info slide, here's why CG wins. Harry Potter ends up going to Voldemort on his own volition. He is killed by Voldemort. And eventually, the Voldemort killing Harry Potter ends up killing Voldemort. So if this debate is to be weighed on information outside the info slide, we will give Harry Potter to Voldemort, Voldemort will kill him, and Voldemort will in the process end up doing what? Killing himself. Therefore, all the benefits of OO about defeating Voldemort are achieved on our side. But that argument maybe was preempted, because that's why you said an info slide, and we must stick to those information that's there, because if you wait outside, that information wins us that debate, because if the aim is to kill Voldemort, we achieve it. Harry Potter ends up resurrecting, Voldemort ends up dying, win-win.
Why we must weigh this debate based on what's in the info slide is because that's the only information we have. And I think what we're going to do on Win from CG is by proving to you contextually why Hogwarts must make this decision, because OO is right, it's an actor debate. We're going to show you why the interests of the actor are best maximized when we give this person up. And then secondly, we're going to win this by prioritizing those interests and showing you how we meet the most fundamental interest of these things. Let me talk about the prophecy. The prophecy cannot be the basis upon which we make our choices. There was a prophecy the world would end in 2012. Did we make decisions based on those choices? Definitely not. To that extent, we think we must base it based on tangible things that have necessarily happened and why we think that is the best thing for us to do it. Secondly, Voldemort is not just a person. He is also an ideology. He was not just about the embodiment of bad things. He was about black magic. He used to teach offensive magic. He was not about defense. He was against Hogwarts. Therefore, to that extent, killing Voldemort doesn't solve the problem. We need to remove the idea of Voldemort from people's minds. Because why we think this is important is because, one, he will make good on his threat. He gave you 1 hour. Nobody gets that context. There's only 1 hour for you to make this choice. What must Hogwarts do within that context specifically? And secondly, he's a creation of Hogwarts as is necessarily created. I've already given you the silver bullet. One, what are the interests of Hogwarts? The interest of Hogwarts firstly is to preserve its students. Opening government tells you there's a moral obligation to do this. We're going to give you analytical extensions to prove to you where the interest specifically comes from and why our interest is much greater to that. So the Octo is Hogwarts and it has interest. OG talk about bulk of benefits with regards to interest. But where does the interest specifically to protect students come from? It's more of a fiduciary responsibility than a moral one. Why? Firstly, they have a fiduciary responsibility based on 5 metrics. One, the intent of the action. The idea of creation of Hogwarts was to create a safe space for students to come and practice magic and for them to be able to express it in a way that is safe for them, away from all the turns of the world. To that extent, Hogwarts made a promise to the extent that parents will bring their children and they'll be in a safe environment. 2, past actions that have been taken by Hogwarts have proved that their primary interest is to protect students rather than others. Hogwarts would never teach students aggressive or offensive magic. They would only teach you defensive magic so that you never harm others, so that you never harm each other within the school. They were always premised on protecting you from each other. That's why Hogwarts used to protect and has a responsibility to do this. 3, they had a contractual obligation, both implied because of the extent that when a parent brings their child to you as a school, they will tell the parents that through the oaths that your child is safe, you're not going to get hurt, always showing you the defenses of these things, so that the contractual obligation creates a fiduciary responsibility on them to do this. 4, there were legitimate expectations because the Ministry of Magic advertised it as a place that is safe for all children, which then created the buy-in for parents bringing these people. Those 4 analytical extensions tell you why the greatest obligation of Hogwarts is to protect its own people and not anybody else. We think that what you must understand here is that Voldemort will make good on his promise because he's given you 1 hour to make a choice. You're only you, your students, and a few professors. What are you going to do in that situation? We think they must exercise their fiduciary responsibility to protect the people within these instances and give up Harry Potter, and we're going to tell you why that's not a bad thing. 2, why they must do this is that they must preserve a staff. The fiduciary responsibility not only exists to the students but also to the staff. To the extent that they go to war, the first people at the front of the line are going to be the Minervas and all those lecturers that are necessarily there. To that extent, you put them in harm's way for something they did not necessarily sign for. To that extent, notice, Hogwarts has already lost Dumbledore at this point. They cannot lose any more of their favorite lecturers to that extent. They must act in a manner that preserves not just the students, but also those who are contractually obligated to them through their parents. I mean, the what do you call it? The lecturers. 2, the principle here is that the reason here you must prioritize the short-term interest is because you have 1 hour to make this choice. This gives you an opportunity to realize that they've already sent out oaths to necessarily the Ministry of Magic. The Ministry of Magic was on their way to bring help, and the parents of the students were also on their way to bring help, which is how the war ended up ensuing. They also have an incentive to do this and the interest to do this, because to that extent, the only way they're ever going to fight is with adults. They're not going to put child soldiers out there. To that extent, the most important thing at this moment, considering the ultimatum that exists, is to buy time. That's why you must make short-term trade-offs in order for long-term benefits. If you go to war immediately, you lose, because you have children who have no expertise in fighting and you necessarily have no defense mechanism. Voldemort has broken all your defenses. You rely on the whole wall that used to protect you. We think that necessarily is important. On our world, we guarantee the temporary safety of these students, which is the most important thing considering the fiduciary responsibility that exists. And also we exercise our fiduciary responsibility to the people, and we maximize the short-term interest considering the nature of the ultimatum is only to act in a manner that is supposed to, in 1 hour. You don't have the whole day. It's not about beating Voldemort. You can't. You must make the choice that makes sense. Then the rationality is not calculus that's based on future considerations, but now. Yes.
Yeah. Apart from the fact that all your information is outside the info slide, right? You don't engage what it means when it says that Voldemort's existence is an active threat to Hogwarts. Engage that.
But okay, the extension is simple. Here's your response. Voldemort wants Harry. You give him Harry. he no longer needs to come to you. Short-term interest and the trade-off of that. That's what I've been arguing the whole time. So to the extent that you preserve that, we think we best maximize that interest. Because if Hogwarts is to protect its students, it must give up Harry. I've already explained to you why Hogwarts or Voldemort will make good on his promise. In 1 hour, you don't have anyone to come save you. To that extent, you must make that short-term trade-off in order for you to act better in the long term. If you need reinforcements, restructuring, and all these things, it's much better. Let's talk about stability and sustainability, because it's the second most important interest of Hogwarts. How do we best get this on our side? Quite simply. One, to that extent, we fight and win. However, even if we fight, here's why we still lose. The long term, we lose the school and its defenses because war has its collateral damage. The defenses of the school are important to the self-preservation of the school in the future. Two, we lose children in the battle. Not just any children, the most important children for the future of magic. The Ron Weasleys, the Hermione Grangers. You're relying on these people for the continuity of magic. Those people dying because they're the ones going to be at the forefront means that you lose the most important actors for the continuity of your magic and sustainability. Three, you divide the school. Okay, give that to OO. Three, you do not get the consent of parents, and thus you risk putting the school in danger, because who will trust Hogwarts ever again when they send children to war with the most dangerous warmonger of that generation? You reduce that incentive for people to buy into Hogwarts in the future, and therefore you fracture the magic world and Hogwarts loses its value. In our world, we lose Harry. Let's just say we lose Harry. But on their own context, can't Harry defend himself? Isn't he the most powerful witch of all of them? Surely, if that is the problem, let him go and fight them. And Voldemort will want to fight him. He won't use other people. So to that extent, let Harry go and fight and we win from CG.
Thank you very much, Member of Government. I would now like to recognize the Member of Opposition.
Okay, are you ready? Okay, I'll start my speech. I don't really have shout-outs. City boys, shout-out to you all across the globe and the cool kids in the building. Okay. So I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panel, we love Harry Potter and all of the fictions around it, but this debate requires us to philosophically consider current day realities, specifically with regards to asymmetric warfare and the rules of engagement within that, right? I would engage all of that principally and pragmatically, but let's take out CG, because Macharia spends the first 2 minutes of his speech in inconsequential contribution, talking about how there was a death at the end and all of that, like that wasn't even necessary, right? The silver bullet thing wasn't necessary. But these are the problems with their contribution. Firstly, this debate can only happen if there is an assumption of the possibility of victory for Hogwarts. Because if you say that there would never be victory in the first instance, we can't have a debate. The reason why we say that is true is because already in fiction, there have been multiple instances where Hogwarts was able to achieve incremental victories against Voldemort. This, for example, looked like being able to defeat some of his relics in the 7 souls that he created, right? There had already been an incremental, accrual of victory, which led us to the final standoff. So there exists plausibility. But the problem with them is that they assume that defeat cannot be principally good
And this is what we're going to be showing to you as to why that can be the case. Because you have to engage what the interest of Hogwarts is, and specifically what the perpetuity of Hogwarts could look like when they concede. So, for example, it wouldn't look like Hogwarts still existing in the very fancy way Hogwarts currently exists. All the parents that he's concerned about would opt out of Hogwarts in like either ways, because they wouldn't trust the structures in there to best preserve the approach to practice and study of wizardry, as it should be, specifically with the ideas that Voldemort was espousing, something that OO already shows you. So we don't think you get preservation of Hogwarts in their world. Like, Hogwarts will be really, really fucked. So all of the impact that they talk about is not consequential. Let's engage asymmetric warfare, and specifically the rules of engagement. So what this looks like in current day reality, right, is like a big rogue state actor engaging you in warfare, a small state, right? And there are little or no possibilities for you to succeed. Let's assume that. There is the element of singularity of hope, and this is very, very crucial. So this looks like a number of things. It looks like the single idempotent relic that you can galvanize around to create the idea of hope. It looks like the significance of Jerusalem, for example, to the Palestinians, and why that remains the rule of engagement with Israel. This is why, for example, they would never relinquish that. What we say, therefore, right, is that around the principal justification of self-defense, that justification then becomes the consideration of what your future looks like post-conceding, right? And this is very, very crucial. So when OO tells you that majority of the reality of Voldemort's rule looks like a lot of dastardly things. It looks like minority exclusion, for example, because of the mudblood exclusion that espouses how he wishes to practice wizardry, right? But more importantly, it looks like the perpetration of brutality with his use of Death Eaters, for example, to extract information from people who are unwilling, and all of the really, really dastardly things that he uses, the black magic that CG talks about. This gives us a clear picture of what the future looks like, and so we are ready to die on that hill. This specifically was why the Vietnamese, even though in the engagement with US, with the disproportionate weapons of warfare, didn't mind engaging them with their hands, right? With cutlasses, with very, very inferior mechanisms of warfare. Because, principally, what the future looked like post-US conquest was unfavorable for the Vietnamese, and they would never settle for that future. That specifically is the consideration of singularity of hope that we are willing to defend, specifically within the principal justification for self-defense. This is very, very crucial. One thing you haven't gotten from any team in today's debate is around how Hogwarts still espouses the principles of democracy. This is very, very crucial. This is how we also extend from closing opposition. This is what it looks like. The Heralds of Democracy says that we uphold majoritarian view, and that is specifically what this looks like. Consensus and how that consensus accrues legitimacy. Majority of the people in Hogwarts want to defend Hogwarts. This is crucial. So that means that majoritarian view is preserved when Hogwarts chooses not to release Harry Potter. But more importantly, Hogwarts isn't the majoritarian dictator that still fucks up minority, because opt-out exists, right? If you do not want to protect Harry Potter, you can leave. Non-participatory backdoors exist in Hogwarts, and we saw that with the number of people who ran out, who didn't engage. So all of the casualties that these guys talk about are already mitigated in our world, because you don't get that full-blown death of all of the people in Hogwarts. There already exists that opt-out. But more importantly, right, we think that there is an incentive for Hogwarts to protect the interest of the majoritarians, and I will show you why that interest is really, really crucial. But before that, Mashara, quickly.
So you can't say that people can opt out and this guy has surrounded you. Like, he's not letting anyone out.
Sit, Mashara, we watched the movie. People who didn't want to fight could leave. Like, sit the fuck down. Let's talk about the interest of Hogwarts, right? The first interest, and this is very, very crucial, is in the consideration of the sort of contributions that have come from Harry Potter in how we can give him a superimposed, benefit of doubt, for example. We say this in a number of ways. Firstly, Harry Potter has espoused a lot of the sort of philosophies and ideologies that Hogwarts itself has built its institutions around, right? Philosophies of inclusion, for example. Philosophies of being able to die for the state. We've seen this through patriotism and instances where the state can stand to defend your interest because you are patriotic. This is why the state, for example, would deploy armed men to go into war, even though those men are going to die either ways, right? Because specifically, the interest of the state in protecting the identity of national interest becomes key around principles of patriotism. This is very, very crucial. This is why the US could justify all of the fucked up, convoys into the Middle East in protection of the US state's interest. Because, they bombed US citizens. So that justifies why they should go in there and invade. Specifically around state actors and interests and how that plays out. Like, all of the fancy things from OO, we think those could be right. We think those are fictional. But what these debates required was more hardline impact to show realities and the philosophies around asymmetric warfare and the rules of engagement and how that best shapes that world. I've never been prouder to oppose.
Thank you very much, Member of Opposition. Would now like to call the whip from Second Government.
Tears. All right. All right, can you hear me? All right, so I'm probably sure that CEO would have relished picking OO when given the chance because there was zero extension in their speech. For them to miss out on all of the context and begin to talk about things like asymmetric warfare really shows the extent to which they have an extension. The reason why conquests like Vietnam and all the spectacular stories he talks about are spectacular is because they rarely happen. These things are not things that you find out to be regular. You can't have a David and Goliath story for every time there is a battle. You can't always say that the one with the lesser resources wins. Secondly, he doesn't prove how they are going to win. Pano, he thinks he can just tell you that there's Vietnam and USA and Vietnam won, so these guys can win. That doesn't happen. The second thing he talks about is to go against the info slide and say, oh, there's democracy in these places and these people, majority of these people support. I'm wondering, Inzube, how did you get into Hogwarts and count the number of people who voted in that situation? That certainly does not happen in their world, and that's not something that they can assume. I'll not waste a lot of time on CEO. I'll do this special thing that I do and engage you in my flow chart. The first thing I want to talk about is the prophecy. Because rightly so, OO and CO are hinging on a prophecy, a certain prophecy that Harry Potter is going to win. In the context of the info slide, we are not obliged to be able to engage with that. So let's talk about prophecy. Even in the magic world, a prophecy is much more a speculative thing and a subjective thing than one that is objective. So even when the events are true, they are mostly influenced by a lot of things, and you cannot exactly be sure. The reason is because these things, you don't know the origin of it. They come from telltales, folklores, and misconstruing events. Seeing thunder strike somewhere and thinking, this guy has a thunder on his forehead, that must be special, right? There's no reason to believe that. Two, because there are conflicting prophecies, people who don't believe, people who have alternate opinions. And three, because people are pressured to believe in these things because they want to have hope. Yeah. There's a fear of the future, and therefore they are forced to believe in these things. On the best case scenario, Masheria tells you, if the prophecy is true,
when we let this guy go, he would win. So, given that you can't trust the prophecy, these guys have no mechanism of winning and therefore no impact on their side. Because all of the impacts Bannerman talks about rest on Voldemort being killed. There's no way we can prove that. What is the reality? Harry Potter is a 17-year-old child who has not even graduated from a school of magic. 2, he is confused and continually puts his friends in danger and falls for pranks. 3, he perhaps needs many years of training from people and professors who are most likely going to die in the battle that he wants to talk about. This child is unprepared. He had even lost the magic wand which he eventually has. There is no reason to believe that that child we are giving up most likely will kill Voldemort. What is the comparative that you have on our side? First, we tell you that Voldemort is going to leave us alone. They say you can't trust Voldemort. I'll come to that. Second, but the worst case on our side, you buy time. Because like Mashera tells you, there's a 1-hour ultimatum which we need to fulfill. What we do on our side is that we are able to preserve the best minds of the magic world. It means that we are able to mobilize and then wage war in the future. 2, reinforcement is coming from the Ministry of Magic. We are able to train more fighters. Worst case scenario, we are able to breathe. We are able to recover. We are able to set up strategy and defenses. Even if Voldemort is not going to keep his promise and is going to attack us right away, these are benefits that we have. But the reason why probably Voldemort will leave us alone is because of what these guys say. Probably because he thinks Harry Potter is the only threat. He thinks that's the only guy who is going to beat him. He's not scared of Dumbledore. He's not scared of anyone else, right? That means that if this is someone that he has, there is no reason to kill all of these people who will become slaves and will serve you in the future because he wants to use them to further his purpose. Secondly, this guy wants to elevate himself to the leadership of the world of magic. He's not just going to bombard him and then destroy most of these people. He's probably going to leave us alone. That means in our best case scenario, this guy run away, become rebels, sit somewhere in the future, regather themselves 10 years later, they can come back and fight. Maybe we'll find a new person that will give the prophecy too. Don't get that on their side. Before I go on,
want to dominate. He doesn't just want Harry Potter. OO tells you that the prophecy, no matter how uncertain, creates hope in such a way that there's a coagulating force that creates like numbers to be able to fight against Voldemort and gets that likelihood of success.
Really, like, let's talk about victories over here. Who best achieves victory? One, let me do a straight comparative. One, you have these guys assembling there's an assembly of Death Eaters who are about to come about you in 1 hour. Right? These guys say there's a probability of victory without proving how necessarily we are able to do that. On our side, we buy time. Even if this guy doesn't hold to his promise, at least there's 30 minutes he's going to laugh or do something and something can happen. There's time on our side comparatively, right? 2, reinforcements from the Ministry of Magic on our side versus child soldiers. These are 16, 17, 14-year-olds with ones like Neville Longbottom's ones that is broken and continually backfires at himself. And these guys say these are the guys that are going to achieve victory and end Voldemort's reign. Worst case, like I said, we survive, right? And we are rebels. And we can, like, even if we run away in most of these instances, we are better off in that circumstances. But let's engage the best case scenario where we win. When we win, it is a Pyrrhic victory. And this is where we win, right? A Pyrrhic victory means that most likely you are not going to get the world that comes after is one that is unpreferable. Why? Because Harry Potter would have lost all of his friends and he's the only one surviving. And given the burden of the prophecy that continues to exist on him, he's going to feel much more lonely. He's going to feel guilty. And most likely he will not act on the prophecy because he thinks that he has let the whole world down. 2, means he will lose the best magic minds. All those Professor Makonga, all those people are people that we are most likely going to lose. And I'm not going to contribute. Like, I've not watched the movie, sorry. People with the resources and secrets are people that we are going to lose. These are the guys who can be able to put the magic world together. That means the future is as bleak as it is. And even after all, and this is the best case scenario where we are even able to defeat Voldemort. So the post-world is not comparatively better. It's even more sad and lonely for Harry Potter. And most likely it becomes a deadlock. That's why the best way we win is to buy time in most of those instances. Let me analyze the principles before I go on. First of all, we are the only team that talks about fiduciary responsibility. The one that comes from OG is to talk about a moral responsibility. We gave you that in the context of the 1 hour that you are given, people are going to view this as the best choice that you took because you're able to save more lives and there's less casualty and there's less backlash. On a joke level, like I'm sure no one probably cares about Harry in the long run. 2, on the value of life. These guys say they value life, but in the end, they are ready to lose millions of lives lives on their word. Given the ultimatum, we think that in itself is something, and no Dumbledore, we think that in itself is a likely outcome. 3, on the uncertainty of outcomes, we are the team that proves to you that Voldemort is likely to keep to his promise. We are also the team that proves to you that even if Voldemort does not keep to his promise, we are the ones that are able to get the best outcomes at the end. At the end of the day, consider what is within the debate, no extensions from CO, and show me why CG does not win. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Government Whip. The House will now recognize the final speaker in the person of the Chief Whip. Here, here.
Elisha Harry Potter, you have to do magic.
Okay, so before I start, since we are all giving shout-outs, I don't really have a shout-out, but I just want to say I'm grateful for being in this final, because I remember watching the one with carrying Prince and Faithfulness when I was in high school back then, so it's great to be in the Hogwarts finals. And yeah, let's have fun. Okay, so I'm going to start shortly. Yeah. Panel. So CG says that we cannot do a lot of like fictional stuff in this debate and use the information we have about how the movie ends to debate this particular debate. Then how do we debate this? There's an info slide. The only way you can debate this particular info slide is by relating these particular issues to issues that are similar in reality and look at how people like Voldemort, which look like oppressors, are likely to act in these kinds of situations and what minority groups or people who are being oppressed are better off doing in these kind of situations. This looks like this. This looks like the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, right? So Palestine conflict. So this means that Palestinians begin to give away the Gaza Strip or give away Jerusalem in order to stop Israel from coming after them because people are going to die and people are going to lose their lives and because they are not able to fight Israel. What this means is that they are going to lose out on their identity, which is something that they want to protect, and then they are going to end up like giving away the land that they want to protect, which is the main reason why they are fighting Israel in the first place. They go in blind after doing all of these things to save their lives and to save so many lives. What this looks like and what happens in this particular world is a world where these particular ideologies of these radical groups or these particular Israelites that believe that the Palestinians don't deserve to be part of them will not all of a sudden go away. What this means is that the oppression will continue to exist. So the people that support Voldemort are less likely to stop going after the people who attend Hogwarts just because they have been submissive. Submission is not a way to fight an oppressor, and submission is not a way to stop an oppressor from coming after you. So if we say we should submit and all of a sudden this particular oppressor is going to keep their word, it's not going to make any sense. But then what OO fails to tell you in this particular debate, they say, oh, Voldemort is less likely to keep his word. We are going to show you an example of how this is really, really possible, right? For example, in a world where your only trump card, in a world where your only leverage is taken away, an oppressor is less likely to stop oppressing you. An example is Taliban and the people of Afghanistan. When the US decided to leave, they said, oh, we are going to seize power, we are not going to fight you. We let these people go ahead and lead. As soon as the US left, 3 days later, they took over power. When your leverage and the person that's supposed to defend you is gone, people that oppress you constantly oppress you. In this debate, Harry Potter is that person who defends the people of Hogwarts. If not, Voldemort will not go after him in any way. That is the reason why we say that regardless of whether you are going to win or lose, protect the only thing that you have that gives you hope. That singularity of hope that Nzube talks about in this debate is very, very, very important, right? So notice how you're not bargaining with some like level-headed person. You're bargaining with an extremist who thinks that a particular group of people should not practice magic at all. This means that this includes like situations where
people believe that you do not need to exist, you do not need to even access the kinds of resources that exist in the state. Those are the kind of realities that this particular debate can't be looked at or can't be seen as. I'll take you later. So I'm going to start with some responses in this debate, right? So first off, let's start with the responses to what OG says in this debate. OG's debate, main debates or make arguments in this debate is that self-defense is good. But self-defense, when you're going to lose valuable things, is bad. Here's why that particular argument is very, very ridiculous. Because when it comes to self-defense, you're going to lose something regardless. At the point where you're at your last breath, at the point where you have absolutely nothing to do but to save yourself, there is something that you're going to lose. At worst, even if you kill a person, you're losing your conscience. There's always a loss that comes with self-defense. But the reason why even a loss is not the issue in this debate is because, as it tells you, when you are looking at what self-defense is not just about saving your life, but it's about what happens after you have saved your life. Are you going to be a living dead, or are you still going to exist after you have saved your life? In their world, if we end up saving our lives, we are going to be a living dead, because Voldemort is going to take over Hogwarts, and the whole idea of what Hogwarts was in the first place would not exist. So this is not even any form of self-defense. You are just being submissive because you are scared. You are just being submissive because you do not really want to defend the ideologies that exist in your environment. That is a very, very funny argument to make on, we are defending ourselves. Makes absolutely no sense. Then they say that, there's going to be a lot of losses. He tells you that there's an opt-out mechanism. Another realistic example. Listen, people do not need to fight with Hezbollah, or do not need to be part of the Palestinian defense mechanism against Israel. If you don't want to fight with the Palestinian defense mechanism against Israel, you can opt out. The only reason why you wouldn't opt out, which is the POM Masharia asks, is because when the Israelis win, you as a Palestinian loses. So if Hogwarts loses, you as a Hogwarts student would lose. That is because the person that comes after Hogwarts loses is somebody that is going to hurt you and is going to come after you. That is the reason why you would stand and defend your people, or stand and defend their ideologies. So if people don't opt out, it is because of the fact that they believe that these particular ideologies, that these particular institutions or states hold dear, are things that are important to them, and they need to defend it at all costs. For people that do not care, they can opt out, as he tells you. So the whole issue about, they are going to lose a lot of people makes no sense. Because the people that you are saying, he's going to come after anyway, are the same people that are defending the fort against Voldemort. It doesn't make any sense in this debate. I'll take you, OG.
Great. So given your defense of opt-out, which is likely to weaken the solidarity of Hogwarts, keeping Harry Potter intensifies the incentive for Voldemort, which means he's more likely to be radical in his approach to Hogwarts. How do you survive under that?
You don't get it. There's a singularity of hope. There's a trump card. That trump card is Harry Potter. For the people of Palestine, that trump card is constantly staying in Jerusalem. As soon as you give Jerusalem up, Israel has no fight with you. So even if 1,000 people support you and you don't have Jerusalem, Israel is not going to attack you, and is not even going to do anything to you, because they can oppress you. The only reason why they can't oppress you is because you hold something that is dear to them, and you hold something that gives you leverage. That particular period wasn't well thought out. Panel, what is CG's entire case in this debate? That we need to win at all costs. This is, as he says, asymmetrical warfare. There is very little likelihood that you are going to win. The only way you are able to win is to hold on to your stronghold, which is Harry Potter. He says the prophecy doesn't matter. It makes absolutely no sense. They say, let's follow the info slide, but they ran away from the info slide. If the prophecy did not matter, Voldemort will not go after Harry Potter in any way. He is the leverage. He is what Voldemort wants. He is that hope that is important to the people, and is the reason why you have to protect him at all costs. So even if you are going to win or lose, it makes no sense. It says, this is not a David Goliath situation. That's the whole point. Voldemort is Goliath, and Harry Potter is the David of the Hogwarts. It makes no sense when he makes that analysis and then runs away. He says, Inzube's argument in this debate about the democracy stuff is not important. Panel, listen. In the info slide, it says that people, one majority of the people within, were bent on protecting Harry Potter. That is because the people know that their entire hope and their leverage is in Harry Potter. At best, we as the people of Palestine will not give up Jerusalem to the Israelites, and will protect this, and will die on this hill. It's been a good day to oppose. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for a wonderful debate. The panel will get back to you soon.
Sasu. Duke Sasu. He should come and tell us a story.
So you get to
Mali. Erasmus. Erasmus.
I switch it here.
Erasmus. Erasmus.
His own will be on. Check his phone.
Erasmus. Erasmus CND right now.
Hello.